Om Shrutismritipurananam Alayam Karunalayam Namami Bhagavatpadashankaram Lokashankaram Ajnananjanhavitirtham Vidyatirtham Vivekinam Sarvesham Sukhadam Tirtham Bharati Tirthamashraye Vidya Vinaya Sampannam Vitaragam Vivekinam Vande Vedanta Tattvagyam Vidhushekara Bharati. Dear friends, welcome to this month's session on Prabodha SUDHAKARA. In the last meeting, we were looking at Linga Dehadi Nirupana Prakaranam. We will continue looking at the next verse in this Prakarana. So in our last meeting, the last verse which we looked at was, we will look at it once again. Tat Sarabhuta Buddhau Yat Pratiphalitam tu Shuddha Chaitanyam Jivaha Sa Ukta Adhyair Yohamiti Spurti Krit Vapushi. So in this Linga Dehadi Nirupana Prakaranam, the Linga Deha or the subtle body, the Sukshma Shariram, was being described by Bhagavad Pada. The Sukshma Shariram is essentially composed of the mind and the Indriyas, both the Karmendriyas and the Jnanendriyas. The mind functionally is classified as Manas, Chitta, Buddhi, Ahankara. Essentially, it is one entity which is functionally decomposed into four, functionally said to be in operating in four modes. So one version of this description was given in Prabodha Sudhakara text in a previous verse which we have seen. Now after the description of the mind and the root of the mind, which was said to be the vasanas, and the root of the vasanas themselves, which was said to be avidya, or the wrong understanding about the nature of oneself, the absence of understanding about the nature of oneself. This is avidya. This avidya causes the vasanas, attachment to the vasanas. The attachment of oneself to the vasanas causes the attachment to the mind and the sense organs and the body and so on and so forth. So the root of the attachment to the Sukshma Shariram, that is, I think I am mind, this feeling, I think I am my sense organs, this feeling is generated eventually, or is generated originally by the original cause of this is the wrong understanding of oneself, for which the reason is the absence of understanding about the real nature of oneself, which is avidya or ignorance. So the destruction of ignorance about oneself, the avidya kshaya, is the only solution to this problem of samsara, which is caused by attachment to the body. So this destruction of avidya is caused by knowledge about the true self, knowledge of what oneself is, which is jnanam. So Bhagavad Pada intends us to guide us into this knowledge by reiterating this idea again and again that the cause is ignorance of your own true self and the solution is knowledge of your own true self. You are the problem. You are yourself. A wrongly understood you is the cause of all problems, and a correctly understood solution to all the problems. Now, what is this nature of this wrongly understood you? The wrongly understood self, how is it? That is the discussion which is going to happen here. How does this wrongly understood you arise? That is the discussion being present here. That is, I think I am body, I think I am the mind. This I as the individual which attaches itself with the body and mind, by what, because of what does it arise? By what process does it arise? This is the description here. Let us read the verse once again. Tat Sara Bhuta Buddhau Tat Sarabhuta Buddhau means what? The mind, Buddhi, the mind, which is the Sarabhuta, which is the essence or the core aspect of the Sukshma Shariram. In that mind, Buddhau means in that mind, yet pratiphalitam tu Shuddha Chaitanyam Jivaha sa Uktaha Adyehi. So the ancients, Adyehi means the forefathers, those who came long before, the wise people who came long before. What did they say? Sauktaha, they said something. What did they say? They said or they identified the Jivaha, this entity called Jivaha, which we call as the individual self. That is, I identify as a individual who goes through one lifetime after another lifetime after another lifetime. So I am going through this Jiva Yatra, birth and death and birth and death. Punarapi Jananam, Punarapi Maranam. Who goes through this? The Jivaha goes through this. What is this Jivaha? This Jivaha is the individual self. What do you mean by individual self? How does it arise? That is being told here in the first part of this verse. That Sarabhuta Buddhau, in that mind, yet pratipalitam to Shuddha Chaitanyam. Shuddha Chaitanyam yet pratipalitam. This Shuddha Chaitanya, which is Atman or Brahman, this Atman or Brahman, which is Shuddha Chaitanya, which is the consciousness principle without having any blemishes, without being touched by any finite aspects, which is the infinite and absolutely pure consciousness principle. Why is it pure? Because it is not touched by karma at all. It is neither attached to papam, nor it is attached to punyam, nor it is attached to asanas, nor it comes under samsara, nor it suffers. None of these uh, individualistic aspects, none of these finite time space bound aspects apply to this pure consciousness principle, which is Chaitanyam, Shuddha Chaitanyam. That is why it is called the Shuddha Chaitanyam, which is Atma, which is the real self. This real self, which is the pure consciousness principle, apparently gets reflected. Pratipalitam means apparently it gets reflected onto this entity called Buddhi. So this Buddhi, this mind, acts as though it is a mirror. It is a mirror which captures the reflection of the true consciousness principle. So this mirror is a subtle mirror. It is not a real mirror. It is not a physical mirror, but it is as though it is a mirror. Why is it as though it is a mirror? Because it is catching the light of consciousness. It is catching the consciousness which is like a light. What does it mean? It means that this consciousness principle is the true awareness principle. It is that because of which everything becomes known. It was told before in a previous prakaranam also, Atma Siddhi prakaranam. You may remember that this Atman is that by which everything becomes known. So that is why we call it as Chit or Chaitanyam. It is consciousness or awareness. It is that which reveals everything. Just like a light reveals every object around it in a dark room, in the same way, we know, we understand, or we become aware of various things because consciousness principle is present. This consciousness principle, when the mind is as though near it, it absorbs the ability to become a knower, as though the mirror absorbs the ability of the light to reveal objects. You understand? The light is coming from some other place. When you catch that light in the mirror, catch meaning as though you catch it, the mirror reflects that light, and through the reflected light, we are able to enlighten other objects which are around. The same way, this consciousness principle is the original knowing principle. This knowing principle, when the mind is present and this knowing principle is present, this mind becomes as though a knower. The without the consciousness principle having to do anything, just like the light doesn't have to do anything for the mirror to become enlightened. Enlightened here we are using it in the literal way. The mirror catches the light. So the mirror becomes enlightened. It attains the ability of revealing other objects simply by being in the presence of that original light. In the same way, this mind attains the ability of being a knower simply by being in the presence of the Atman, the Shuddha Chaitanyam. So therefore, just like the mirror reflects and attains the ability to reveal other objects, the mirror reflects the light and attains the ability to reveal other objects. Similarly, this mind attains the ability to reveal other objects by being a knower, by becoming a knower in the presence of the original pure consciousness principle, which is the original witnessing principle, Shuddha Chaitanyam. This reflected consciousness principle, after reflection, when the mind is catching that light, this combination of the mind along with the reflected light is called as the Jivaha. The Shuddha Chaitanyam, when it is reflected on the mind, this reflected consciousness is called Jivaha. This reflected consciousness, really speaking, is not there at all. Just like the light is reflected from the mirror, is not separate from the original light. Similarly, this Jivaha is not separately existing from the Shuddha Chaitanyam. It is the same Shuddha Chaitanyam, but because of apparent association with the Buddhi, it attains a new status, a new problematic status, which is called Jivaha. It is an apparent name. It is not a real entity. This Jivaha, just like the reflected light is not different from the original light, this Jivaha also is not really different from the original Shuddha Chaitanyam. But because of the reflection, it attains a new name only. That name is called Jivaha. So the Adyahi, the people who are the wise men of the past in the Upanishads, etc., it is stated, and the wise men who have studied the Upanishad have stated, this is what the Jivaha is. This Jivaha, it is a special category of problematic. It is a problematic creation, we can say. It is both a blessing as well as a curse in some sense. Why is it a blessing? It is a blessing because the individual who is the Jiva has now the ability to know what is the true nature of oneself. So therefore it is being a Jivaha is a blessing. It is a blessing because it is it is nothing but a Srishti. It is part of the Srishti of Ishvara. Jivaha is part of the Srishti of Ishvara. So it is a blessing. Anything which is a Srishti of Ishvara should be a blessing. At the same time, it is a problematic thing because this Jivaha confuses himself with something else. What is that? Yo aham iti spurti krit vapushi. So this is the problem attained by the Jiva. Vapushi aham iti spurti krit. So vapushi means in the body, or attached to the body, this Jivaha becomes attached to the body and calls himself as I am the body. Vapushi ahamiti spurti krit. So this Jivaha says, I am the Sukshma Shariram. I am now passing through birth after birth after birth, death after death after death comes to me. I have all the sufferings, I have all the pain, I have all the sorrow, of course, pleasures also, but more sorrow than pleasure I have, and therefore I am a suffering, small, little, problematic individual. And then the story of the life begins. So the person wants to run away from all that is problems, all problems in life, and the person wants to go desperately towards comforts and pleasures. So therefore the story of the livelihood, chasing after livelihood begins and samsara begins. So how does it happen? Aham iti spurti kritu vapushi. Vapushi, in the body, both the sukshma and the sthula shariram, this jivaha becomes attached to it, attached to these sharirams. Because of that, the problems continue. So with that, let us continue to the next verse. Now, recall that I mentioned this jivaha is only the reflected consciousness principle. It is not the original consciousness, neither it is only the mind. It is a mix of both of these things. It is also not really there, just like the light which is reflected from the mirror is not separately existing of the original light. Similarly, the jivaha is not separately existing from the Brahman or Atman, which is the Shuddha Chaitanyam. So the Shuddha Chaitanyam is not itself touched by any sorrow. It is not a karta, it is not a bhokta, it is not a jnata, it does not fall under the purview of samsara, it does not become any individual at any point of time. The Shuddha Chaitanyam remains Shuddha Chaitanyam. But this Jivaha, which is the Abhasa Chaitanyam, which is the reflected consciousness, apparently becomes the knower, apparently becomes the sufferer, apparently becomes the experiencer, the doer, etc. So, this apparent nature of the consciousness becoming karta, bhokta, jnata is being talked about in these verses. Charatara taranga sangat pratibhimbam bhaskarasya cha chalam syat asti tatha chanchalata chaitanye chitta chanchalyat. So, how does the unmoving, unaffected consciousness principle, how does it become as though it is a karta, bhokta, jnata? That which is akarta, the chaitanyam, shuddha chaitanyam is akarta, abhokta, and not jnata also. Neither it is a real knower, because apart from the shuddha chaitanyam, nothing exists. Brahman alone is there, is what the Shruti is saying. So how can a singular entity which is the only existence, how can it be a knower of something else, or a doer of some action, or a experiencer of some experience? It can never be. However, by this association with the Sukshma Shariram, it becomes as though it is a knower, as though it is a doer, and as though it is an experiencer. So that is being talked about here. Charatara taranga sangat pratibhimbam bhaskarasya cha chalam syat. So the analogy given here is the sun, which is unmoving, which cannot be sullied, which cannot be wavering, which is present in the sky as though it is a constant, when it is being reflected onto the moving waves of the ocean. In the previous verse, Bhagavad Pada told the example of a mirror reflecting the light. In this example, in this analogy, the idea is the waves reflecting the sun. So, if you have gone to the beach, if you have gone to any lake, you see that sun is getting reflected on the water, and when the ripples are flowing on the water, it is as though the sun is moving, but it is only as though the sun is moving. You who are wise enough to understand that the sun which is there on the sky never moves, but it is only the reflection which is moving. So the reflection makes it appear as though the original sun is moving, whereas the original sun is not moving at all. In the same way, asti Charatara taranga sangat pratibhimbam bhaskarasya chalam syat. So you understand, charatara taranga sangat means by association with those waves which are moving, those waves which are wavering all the time. This bhaskarasya pratibhimbam, the reflection of the sun, attains movement as though chalam syat. As though it attains movement, it behaves, it happens. Asti tatha chanchalata chaitanye chitta chanchalyat. In the same way, chitta chanchalyat, because of the movement of the mind, because of the movement of the subtle body, chaitanye chanchalata asti. The consciousness principle as though becomes a mover, as though attains the nature of a karta, bhokta, jnata. Let us go on to the next verse. Nan varka pratibimba saliladishu yassa chavabhasayati kim itara padartha nivaham pratibimbo pyatmanas tadvat. So now this is a question which is raised by the Purva Pakshi, by the questioner. It is a question which is raised as part of trying to understand a little bit more. A doubt is raised in the mind of the questioner. What is this doubt? Arka pratibimba saliladishu yaha sa cha avabhasayati kim itara padartha nivaham avabhasayati kim. So, what is the question here? The question here is Arka Pratibimbaha. Arka is the sun, the sun's reflection. So, Arka Pratibimbaha Saliladishu. So, on the waves which are there in the ocean, Saliladishu, this the light of the sun which is reflected on the waves of the ocean, does this light have the capability of revealing other objects? Now you go to the beach, the sun reveals everything anyway, and the light which is a result of the reflection on the waves, that is also there, that light is also there, but this light is not playing, the reflected light from the waves is not playing any special role in revealing any objects. However, it seems that the Atman, via reflection on the mind, you said that it attains the nature of becoming a knower of various objects. So the mind attains the nature of, mind attains the capability of being a knower. Mind attains the capability of being a revealer of objects of the world by association with the pure consciousness principle. How is that possible? Should it not be possible? Should it be possible at all? That is the question. Api atmanas tadvat. So, this pratibimbaha, atmanaha pratibimbaha, api tadvat. So, shouldn't the reflection of the atma, should it also not be able to reveal the objects which are there in the external world? Just like the reflection of the sun on the waves cannot reveal the objects, does not play any role in revealing the objects. Only the sun directly reveals the objects of the world, of around the sea. In the same way, the reflection of the original consciousness principle in the mind, which is called the jivaha, it also, jivaha also should not be able to reveal anything about the world which is around it. It should be the Atman alone which is revealing, etc. That is being talked about here. That is the thing here. But it is as though there is a problem here because the jivaha attains the status of being a knower, whereas by the example which is given here, the reflected light does not reveal anything. The reflected light is not capable of revealing anything, whereas the jivaha seems to be capable of revealing something. How is that possible? That is the question which is raised. Now, having understood this, let us read the response given by Bhagavad Pada in the next verse. Pratipalitam Yat tejas savitus thavituhu kansyadi patreshu tad anupravishtam antargriham anyarthan prakashayati. So, a slightly different analogy is being told here compared to the previous one where the sun is getting reflected on the waves. So, we should not point out a fault in the description of the scriptures because different analogies are used in different places. It is the case, it should be the case because the analogy is only an analogy. It is for highlighting one important point, not that every aspect of the analogy should be relatable to the situation at hand. So in the previous analogy of the sun getting reflected on the waves, yes, there is the problem that it does not describe how the reflected light can reveal other objects. However, the analogy there stops with the idea that there is reflection. Just like there is a reflection of the original sun on the waves, in the same way, the knower, the jiva, is nothing but a reflection of the original consciousness principle, the pure consciousness principle. That is what was the analogy. We have to keep it to that limit only. Now, if there is a question regarding the capability of the reflected light to reveal other objects, in that sense, the analogy has to be slightly changed to something else. What is the something else here? Pratipalitam yat tejaha savituhu kansyadi patreshu. So the analogy is now changed a little bit. Savituhu yat tejaha kansyadi patreshu pratipalitam. So a different reflecting medium is introduced here. What is that reflecting medium? Kansyadi patreshu. On a vessel which has a shiny metallic covering. A vessel made of a shiny metallic object. What is that kind of vessel? You can think a brass or a silver vessel upon which the light of the sun falls. Why is the vessel being brought here? Because the vessels are available within our homes. So you imagine a darkened home without any direct holes through which the sunlight can come inside. However, the sunlight is falling upon some shiny metallic object, because of which that reflected light then can be revealing the objects within the house. This we can see even in our own homes. Even today, we are able to see such scenarios. Light from some place, light from the sun falls on a reflecting medium, a shiny metallic surface, and the light which is reflected from that metallic surface comes inside our home and reveals various objects within our home. That is definitely possible. So in the same way, that anupravishtam. So there is a small uh, mistake here in the next verse. It should be a continuous compound. Tad anupravishtam antargriham anyarthan prakashayati. So in the same way, the light which is entering, this is only half of the analogy. The next verse will continue that analogy. This light which is reflected via the metallic objects comes within the home and reveals that anupravishtam antargriham anupravishtam. It comes within the home, and then within the home, whatever anyarthan, apart from other objects, apart from that reflected surface, are now being prakashayati, being revealed by this light. In the same way, chit pratibhimbastadvat buddhishu yo jivatam praptaha netradindriya margaihi bahirarthan so avabhasayati. So in the same way, this light of the revealing capability of the original consciousness principle, after being reflected upon the mind, makes the mind into a knower, makes the mind into a capability, gives the mind the capability of being a knower, being the revealer of objects which are available outside the body, outside the Suksha Shariram. This is the idea. So, Chit Pratibimbaha Tadvat Buddhishu. So, in the same way, Chit Pratibimbaha. What is the Chit Pratibimbaha? The Jivaha. Buddhishu Chit Pratibimbaha yo Jivatam Praptaha. That jiva which attains the which is the reflection of the original consciousness, In the mind, it becomes alive. The jivaha attains life, attains or capability of being a knowing principle within the mind because of the original knowing principle, which is original pure consciousness, through the netradindriya margehi, through the various indriyas, such as the eyesight, right? The capability of seeing, capability of hearing, etc. Netra means the sight, seeing, the eyes, through the indriyas of sight and other indriyas, netradindriya margaihi, through them, bahirarthan so avabhasayati. So the mind, which is now lit up by the consciousness, the reflected consciousness becomes capable of revealing the objects which are present in the world through the sense organs. Okay. So it is very clear now. The question which was raised before, how can the reflected consciousness reveal external objects, is now answered via an analogy which was told here. So with this, the description of the Linga Deha and the reflected consciousness principle or the Jiva is concluded. This is a very important chapter because this is almost at the middle point of our Prabodha Sudhakara, the text. So far, we have seen Bhagavad Padar talking about various topics. First, the preparatory stages, then what is Atma, then what is Maya, then what is Linga Deha, in which the Avidya and Jiva was described. So at this point, Bhagavad Padar expects that we clearly understand what is meant by Atma and how it becomes as though it is a jiva because of association with the body, because of this avidya, it attains the it attains as though attains the nature of the jiva. But the atma is not the jiva is the atma. What does it mean? The reflected light is not the original light. The reflected sun is not the original sun. Original sun is not the reflected sun. I'm sorry. But the reflected sun is the original sun. You understand? The light which is the reflect after reflection, whatever light is going is indeed a original light. But in spite of the absence of the reflecting medium, even if the reflecting medium was not available, the original light is never switched off. The sun is never disappearing, even though the reflecting medium can disappear. So the reflected light is the original light. However, the original light exists even without depending on the reflected light. In the same way, the Atma is the original consciousness principle. The Jivaha is the name which is given to that original consciousness principle in a special context. After having association with the Sukshma Shariram, this name is given. But in spite of the presence or absence of the Sukshma Shariram, the Atma definitely exists as it is. That is our real nature. This, if we understand, then we are in a position to move on to the 10th chapter, the Advaita Prakaranam, which we will see in the forthcoming meeting.